Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin with some breaking news this afternoon. A guilty verdict has been rendered against one of the two Thunder Bay police officers facing Police Act charges in the investigation into the death of Stacey DeBungy. Staff Sergeant Sean Harrison has been found guilty of neglect of duty and discreditable conduct. Sergeant Sean Whipple has been found not guilty of those same two charges. Moving on now, the Friends of Chippewa Park have been forced to cancel the upcoming Family Fest 101. The 5-day event was planned for July 28th to August 1st. The announcement was made this morning. Organizers say they've faced, quote, a perfect storm of setbacks, including a lack of volunteers and funding. The volunteer group had a $130,000 shortfall in the budget and was waiting on 2 funding applications. But when officials were told a decision wouldn't be made in time for the festival, they decided to pull the plug. Ian Angus with the Friends of Chippewa Park says this is a tough blow for he and the group.
Oh, it's probably one of the most difficult and disappointing decisions I've ever had to make, that the Friends of Chippewa has ever had to make. We've been pretty successful over the last 20 years in terms of our funding applications. We've raised and invested over $11 million in the park.
There is one bright spot. Our Kids Count has agreed that the Children's Festival will still be held on July 30th. The free event is open to kids and their parents. Thunder Bay City Council has voted to hand off responsibility for recycling collection to the private sector. It comes after recently passed provincial legislation that will see the job taken over by packaging producers by 2026. The changeover, however, will take effect here midway through 2024. It shouldn't change the service much for residents, and it's estimated the move will save the city about $3 million a year starting in 2025. Some councillors expressed concern that the passing of the duty in the summer of 2024 could lead to collection issues until the province-wide mandate kicks in 2 years later. But Solid Waste and Recycling Manager Jason Sherband insists it will be business as usual.
Service will be maintained during that year and a half window. So material will still be collected at the curb.
Okay.
They will still have to maintain 3 depots in the community. Now, not necessarily our sites, but they will have to maintain 3 depots.
The city currently has a recycling contract with GFL Environmental, but it includes an early termination clause. Council has also tentatively approved an affordable access pilot project. It will offer low-income residents discounted monthly transit passes and a credit to be used at city recreational facilities. Vasilios Bellos explains.
The Affordable Access Pilot Project was narrowly passed on a 6-5 vote, with its cost being up for debate during the 2023 budget period. Anyone approved for the project will be given half-off monthly transit passes and a $350 credit for recreational facilities. The rec subsidy will be available to those 18 or older unless the person is already receiving similar supports, with the transit subsidy being open to those between 25 and 59. At-large Councillor Aldo Roberto was highly supportive of the program, stressing how important it would be for low-income families.
We do everything for the people that don't have anything. We do everything possible. You know, programs provided, healthcare, benefits, etc. For the ones that are working, the working poor, sometimes they need that little push.
The 3-year pilot project would benefit 250 city residents living under Canada's low-income cutoff. With such a divisive vote, some on council were skeptical of the program, including Mayor Bill Morrow, who could not defend the transit subsidy. He stressed there is already a $12 million tax support program for people who use transit, and this project does not address other low-income people in the city.
How do you not countenance and think about the people in the city who are paying or earning $30,000, $40,000 a year, who own a car because they need a car and can't live without a car?
Council also approved further study on a possible home retrofit program that would provide locals with low-interest loans to make their houses more efficient and environmentally friendly. Executive Chair of Enerva, Parminder Sandhu, was at City Hall to answer questions about the program and says while there are similar initiatives, this one's more ambitious.
The intention is to get to deeper retrofits, the more difficult things like even added insulation, improving to high-performance windows, and eventually a pathway to heat pumps and full electrification. So this is intended to be much more deeper and more widely available.
City staff say the potential program will be essential if they are to reach their planned net zero climate goals. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
The Thunder Bay Public Library has a new CEO. The board has hired Richard Togman, a local entrepreneur who served on the library board before taking on this new role. The union that represents library workers has misgivings about the hiring, however, citing concerns about Togman's time on the board. Lee Noonan has the details.
The new CEO of the public library, Richard Togman, says he's excited to take on a new role after sitting on the library board for the past 5 years.
I think there's a lot of interesting work ahead being CEO of the public library system, and I'm super pumped to get going.
He's now stepped down from the board and says he played no part in the process that resulted in his hiring. Togman is also stepping down as CEO of Rent Panda, a company he co-founded. His business chops were an important factor in the decision to hire him, says board chair Carol Grieve.
So we chose to split the role and have hired a CEO that will look after the other part of business, library business, and we will have a head librarian that will look after what we call traditional library.
Coming into the role as a non-librarian, Togman says his business and academic backgrounds present an opportunity to bring an untraditional focus to the role.
So for me, I get to have the best of both worlds. I get to come from an interesting mix of backgrounds and then really draw on the wealth of experience that our librarians and library staff have to really have a great synthesis in terms of what I can bring to the institution.
CUPE Local 3120 has issued a written statement offering, quote, mixed reviews of Togman's vision for the library. Major layoffs of library staff during the COVID shutdown were one of several issues raised by the union, which represents most of the workers, and they questioned Togman's positive comments about the library and the actions of the board during his tenure. Togman and Grieve both dispute some of the union's assertions and will be responding more fully in future.
Being on the board during the pandemic has been a very challenging time, and I know our past CEO had a difficult time with it as well. All of the operational details in terms of staffing were led by the past CEO, and the board tried to support him as best they can. But coming in now as a new CEO, for me, it's a fresh page. Being a board member and being a CEO are very different roles and opportunities.
Togman says his first step as CEO will be to engage in deep consultation with all library stakeholders, including library staff and the union, and that he hopes to continue the work of the past 10 years in making the library a more welcoming and inclusive space while also taking the library towards interesting new directions. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
The federal government has announced more than $2.3 million worth of investments for medical technology here in Thunder Bay. There's money for the hospital's cyclotron and for RegenMed's DermGen product, which helps heal diabetic ulcers. Corey Nordstrom reports.
Patty Hajdu, the minister responsible for FedNor, was on hand for the announcements that see her government investing heavily into the health sciences field in the Thunder Bay area.
It's really about making sure that we have the supports in place for the kind of innovation that's happening right here in Northwestern Ontario. This is homegrown here in Northwestern Ontario, and people should be really proud of what's happening.
Over $2.3 million will be split between the regional hospital and the Lake Superior Center for Regenerative Medicine, or RegenMed. The lion's share will go to the hospital, with over $1.2 million towards the cyclotron and radiopharmacy technology to make radioisotopes for medical imaging and research. Another $680,000 is earmarked to expand its medical imaging suite.
If we have our own radioisotopes that we're able to produce here, it really means that when there are delays and we would otherwise have to cancel patients, we won't have to do that anymore. We could actually run another batch, for example, and to be able to keep that patient, the treatment plans intact. So for a patient, it's a much better experience.
But it's also really good for people who have to travel, in some cases, a long distance to be able to get treatment, diagnostic services, and to be able to do that with a more confidence that they're really going to be able to achieve those healthcare goals without that additional burden of having to go back and perhaps return.
Fenor is also funding the work of Regen Med's DermGen product to the tune of over $412,000. A team of 17 is working on the project, which seems to be leading towards groundbreaking advances in treating non-healing diabetic foot ulcers.
Too many lead, unfortunately, in the end to a below-the-knee amputation. In our early studies, we've now treated 49 patients, and we're seeing incredible results. 83% of the patients treated with a difficult-to-heal diabetic foot ulcer have had full closure of the wound within 4 to 6 weeks, and it's just phenomenal.
Medical professionals say that individuals with this affliction in the Northwest are more likely to lose a limb than anywhere else in the province. There are currently 21 clinicians doing clinical studies on DermaGen, and more will be added in the next 8 months. But that's expected to grow exponentially after that point. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
It's been almost a week since the Moderna vaccine was approved for kids under 5, and we're still waiting for word on exactly how it's going to be rolled out here in Ontario. Beth McDonnell has more.
Mom Samaya Howlatter says she noticed a difference in her 6-year-old son's health after immunizing him against COVID-19.
Before he frequently is a running nose and the fever come, but after I give him double dose vaccine, now he's feeling well.
Give mommy a hug, a kiss. Give mommy a kiss.
Now that the vaccine has been approved by Health Canada for children 6 months to 5 years, Howlatter says she also plans to vaccinate her 2-year-old daughter. How are you going to get the vaccine? Where are you going to get it for her?
I have no idea.
The approval means it's just a matter of time before doses are distributed. The Ontario Ministry of Health is expecting the pediatric supply from the federal government later this week. But groups administering the vaccine are already getting ready.
I would say it would be a smaller subset, maybe about half of those pharmacies will participate. Some will do 5 and up, some will do 2 and up.
The Ontario Pharmacists Association says 3,000 locations have so far taken part in the vaccine effort, but they will play a secondary role with the littlest ones. It says doses will also go to pediatricians, family doctors, and public health units.
Not all pharmacists are set up to look after this age category. It takes a longer time, so you need to book more time with the infant and child and parents. You need to send information typically in advance. There's a lot of techniques that are used to, we call it the card system, right? So it's comfort, it's ask, it's relax, it's distract.
The Ontario College of Family Physicians says some family doctors will be able to give the vaccine in clinics and others may join public health units. Without knowing the exact date doses will arrive, bookings for appointments are not happening yet.
That was CTV's Beth McDonnell. Magnus Theatre has been forced to cancel 5 shows in its new outdoor venue due to positive COVID cases among the actors in the latest production. The theatre company just started presenting the musical called Home, a Bluegrass Celebration last Thursday night. The play features 8 local actors and musicians. There's no word on how many cast members were infected by the virus. 4 evening shows from tonight until Friday have been canceled, along with a Wednesday matinee. Magnus officials say they plan to resume the performances on Saturday and continue to run the show until the following Saturday, June 30th. Affected ticket holders for the canceled shows will be contacted. A large number of Norwest Community Health Centre staff are now unionized. Nurses, administrative staff, and other healthcare workers are now being represented by the Ontario Public Service Employees Union. 126 staff members in Norwest voted in June, with the majority in favor of joining OPSEU. Union reps say the employees are very happy to join healthcare workers across the province. One of the reasons employees voted to unionize were the opportunities for health and safety training. Norwest CEO Juanita Lawson says they'll soon enter contract negotiations with the union.
We received the decision on June 30th that Norwest, our employees will be represented by the Ontario Public Service Employees Union, and so we're looking forward to working with our employees and with OPSEU to achieve a collective agreement.
There's no timeline for the bargaining process. Lawson says in the meantime she doesn't anticipate any changes for Norwest patients. It's been a slow start to the home construction season in Thunder Bay, at least when it comes to new single-family homes, but a major apartment project is boosting the local numbers. Canada Mortgage and Housing has released its latest home construction figures. The stats show there were 16 single-detached homes started in the Thunder Bay area in June. That's one more than during the same month in 2021. And there was a 3-story, 40-unit apartment complex started last month along Kingsway. The project is valued at more than $12 million. As for the year-to-date, the CMHC stats show the number of single-detached home starts has dropped from 39 at this point last year to just 26 this year. But thanks to that big apartment project, the total housing units being built have risen from 50 to 70. Well, Fiona, a little bit of a difference from yesterday when